Advaita Radhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. प्रभुपाद की जय, श्री पंचतत्व की जय, गौर प्रेमानंदे। Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Rama Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare प्रभुपाद की पंच तत्व की जय गौर प्रेमानंदी
Prav lepo pozdravljeni na današnjem nedeljskem srečanju in najlepša za udeležbo. V prvi vrsti najlepša hvala za navdihujoče bhađane pod vodstvom Džajnita Gaure Prabhuja in vsem, ki so ga spremljali na vajšnostih glasbilih in tudi sodelovali zraven z petjem in odgovarjanjem. Sedaj pa sledi predavanje in sicer od Caitanya Candre Prabhuja. Zdaj pa na hitro povejmo par besed o njem. Caitanya Candra Prabhu je učenec njegove svetosti Bhakti Dire Damodare Svamija, ki je učenec njegove svetosti Bhakti Tirtha Svamija. Je iskren, srčen, entuzijastičen in ponižen bhakta, za katerega vajšnavska praksa predstavlja način življenja, vir veselja in navdiha. Hvala. veselje navdiha. S knjigami Šrila Prabhupada je prišel v stik leta 1992 in se posvetil proučevanju vedske književnosti, pozneje pa tudi deljenju leti. In kot Sankirtan Bhakta je 7 let potoval po Rusiji, Južni Braziliji in del leta preživel v Majapurju. Je pa potem tudi obsežno znanje svetih spisov delil kot predavatelj, kot pisatelj na družbenih omrežjih in tudi na svoji spletni strani Wisdom of the Vedas oziroma Modrosti ved. Drugače pa se tudi rad vključuje v petje kirtana na Harinamih in zadnjih 2 leti živi v Majapurju. Predano se posveča pisanju knjig in pomaga bhaktam pri razumevanju svetih spisov. No, sedaj pa prisluhnimo predavanju, ki bo v angleščini. Če kdo potrebuje prevod, pa se lahko obrne na Dojal Chandra Prabhuja.
Hare Krišna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, is there anyone who is completely new, who is coming from the first time? Oh, Hare Krishna Prabhu. But you are from India, you know everything from birth. Yes. You heard Bhagavad Gita from your grandmother, right? Ah, okay, you know already. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So today I'm going to speak a little bit about the Vedic universe, about the concept of the universe that we read about in the Vedas, like the Vedic view of the universe. It's a little bit different from what we study in school, but the goal is also very different, because in school we normally hear that Big Bang, life appears from matter, everything is by chance, and so on. The Vedas give a different opinion, a different view of the universe that is much more enlivening, that is much more useful from the purpose of self-realization. So, just to start, there is a small verse here from the Bhagavad Gita. Atava bahunaitena king gyatena tavarjuna vistabhyaham idam kritsnam ekansena stito jagat. So Krishna says, but what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So the Vedas, they describe the universe in a way that it can be easily connected with Krishna. So the purpose of this study of Vedic cosmology, like that's why Sukadeva Goswami takes half of the 5th canto to explain it, is to teach us ultimately how to see Krishna in the universe. Every time that we look to the sky, we can see Krishna there. And not just to the sky, every time that we look to the sun, to the moon, everywhere. So here is a introduction. I made some slides here today to make it very organized and that you can have also some visuals, because many of these concepts of the universe are very, very difficult to understand, without seeing something, just by explaining by words. But here is a few points just to start. So the view that we have about the universe is very, very important, is very influential on our concept of reality. Like the way we believe the cosmos work is very important for us to determine our view of the world. Like our role of the world, what I'm doing here, who I am, where I should go, and so on. Like if I believe that everything is by chance, then okay, let me just enjoy. Like there's no consequence, there is no goal in life, right? If I believe that the universe was created by Krishna, then immediately the goal becomes different. Oh, let me practice Krishna consciousness, right? Let me go somewhere. So the main purpose of this cosmological model that is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam is exactly to help us to see the universe as a manifestation of Krishna's potencies. right? To see the universe as connected with Krishna, and not as something that just appeared by chance. In the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami, he describes the universal form. That's also what Krishna shows to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. What is the purpose of the universal form? Is exactly to help us to see Krishna everywhere, to see the universe as a form of Krishna. And we can see Krishna in the universe. We can see Krishna when we go to the sky. Right? Because ultimately, when we perfectly understand that everything comes from Krishna, there is no more material universe, ultimately speaking. Like it may look a little far from us, but ultimately when we perfectly understand that everything is energy of Krishna, everything should be used in his service, then we are not in the material world anymore. We are in the spiritual world. Right? Because everything is ultimately spiritual. Everything comes from the energy. There is nothing really material. What makes it material is when we separate from Krishna. When I believe that this is disconnected from Krishna, then it becomes material. When I believe that this is for me to enjoy, it has nothing to do with God, then it becomes material. So here we have not exactly a map, but an artistic representation of the universe. Just don't ask me, please, who took this photo. I don't know. But it shows very well the position of everything. So we have here, okay, you can't see the map. But anyway, there in the center, we have Krishna, Govinda, and this represents Goloka Vrindavan. Right? And around Goloka Vrindavan, you have these very beautiful yellow globes. These are the Vaikuntha planets. So this represents the spiritual universe, right? Goloka and the Vaikuntha planets. This is 3/4 of the creation. So most of what happens there. There, most of the souls live. But these are places of service to Krishna. So everyone who lives there serves Krishna. These are the souls who are awakened for their constitutional position, like of Krishna. Then we have the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, which is this light that is around all the Vaikuntha planets. And after the Brahma Jyoti, we have the causal ocean. Both the Brahma Jyoti and the causal ocean, they are also spiritual. The causal ocean is still spiritual. The causal ocean is like a border. So, but these are not positions of service. These are marginal positions where the souls, they are not part of the material universe, but they are also not part of the spiritual universe. So they are like deep sleep. The souls are just sleeping there. They are not in the nightmare of material existence, but they are also not awakened to their constitutional position of service to Krishna. So it's like dreamless sleep, like deep sleep. You are not in one side, you are not on the other side. But of course you don't stay eternally in deep sleep. So from there you go from one side or to the other eventually. Then there is another point here. Here we have Mahavishnu, right? So Mahavishnu, he is here laying down on the bed of Sesha on the causal ocean. And he's creating many, many material universes from the pores of his body, right? So every time he exhales, material universes, millions and billions of these material universes comes from his breath. And when he inhales, all these universes, they go back to him and they are related. So one cycle of creation is one breath to Mahavishnu. So imagine how big and how powerful he is. That entire material universes pass through the pores of his body. That's the definition of how great God is. Right? Imagine. This universe that we are, how big it is, we can't calculate. We have no idea, right? But this whole universe, with all the coverings that are around it, they pass through the pores of the body of Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu is just the part of Krishna. So how powerful Krishna is. Right? So this gives us some idea of the power of God. And also, in terms of time, because the universe, it lasts for 311.04 trillion years from our perspective. And that's one breath for Mahavishnu. So, yeah. And not only one universe, like he creates all the universes. And it's interesting that this is something that this idea of multiple universes is something that is very modern, right? It's very, like it started being like seriously discussed in scientific circles maybe 35 years ago. Before that it was science fiction. Now it's science, they are researching about that. And that's something that the Vedas already explained a long time ago. Then we have Mahavishnu creating inseminating the material energy just with his look. So we have here the material energy, Prakriti, represented by this her personification. I think it's too loud now. Yes. So Mahavishnu, he doesn't have to work to create the material universe. He just looks in the direction of his potency, of the material energy. And by this look, everything starts, everything is put into movement. This look of Mahavishnu is in the form of Sadashiva. Sadashiva is the original form of Shiva, who is Vishnu Tattva. So Sadashiva, he carries with him all the souls who desire to participate in the material creation. And together with all the souls, he also carries Kala, which is the time energy. The time energy is the energy that puts matter in movement. Right? Because of time, everything changes, everything is in movement, everything is created, everything is destroyed. Right? So time is the energy that puts matter in movement. So Lord Mahavishnu glances the material energy, and then we have this sequence that is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. So it starts with Prakriti, the material energy itself, then Pradhana manifests all the material elements. From this Pradhana, when this Pradhana is activated by time, by the energy of the Lord, then it becomes Mahatattva. From the Mahatattva, the three modes of nature appear: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And then by successive combinations of Mahatattva and these three modes, the material elements appear, and then the whole creation appears. One way to understand this process is if we think about milk. Because what milk is? Milk is a combination of carbs and proteins and fats and so many ingredients, right? But everything is dissolved in a liquid. So Pradhana is like that. All the material elements, they are mixed, they are dissolved in one thing, homogeneous. But what happens when we combine milk with time? Did you think about that? Someone knows? You combine milk and time, what you get? Okay, a little later. Okay, but yes, correct, but it's a little later. First thing that we get by the combination of milk and time. Okay, before yogurt, we get cream. Yes, first separation is cream, right? So this fat that is dissolved with yogurt, with the milk, it comes on top. So now it's not homogeneous anymore. Now you have cream and you have milk. So similarly, when you combine this pradhana with the time energy, the three modes, they appear. They come to the top, let's say. And then by combining these three modes with the sum of the other of the elements of pradhana, you successfully create the different material elements, starting by ether, then air, then fire, then air, then water, then earth, and so on. Right? So it's like milk. Like you take the cream out, then you make cheese, then you combine the cheese with the cream, and it becomes something else, and then you make powdered milk ingredient, and then you combine with, I don't know, you can make many preparations like this, right? Just everything from a single component, this milk. So then Okay, so then we have this idea of the 5 elements. Because when we hear about 5 elements, like look something very outdated. Oh, ether, fire, air, water. Like look something from ancient Greece or something like that. But actually this is more scientific than it appears. Because in chemistry and physics, the elements that are classified according to the number of protons and electrons, like periodic table. So for example, hydrogen, 1 proton, 1 electron, right? And then you have isotopes, you have different variations, right? But it's according to the organization of the atom, right? Then the elements, they are classified. So the Vedas, they don't classify in terms of atoms. They classify in terms of these 5 elements. Why it's classified like that? Atom is not something that is unknown in the Vedas. Atoms are mentioned in the Vedas. The Vedas describe different combinations of atoms. So atoms are something very well known to the sages who wrote the Vedas. Why they chose to classify matter in terms of 5 elements instead of classifying in terms of different types of atoms? The point is that atoms are something that is part of our reality, of our gross dimension. In the Vedic universe, we don't have just one dimension. We have multiple dimensions. We have 14 planetary systems, and then we have subdivisions inside of them. So this periodic table, it is valid only here. It's valid only for our dimension, for our reality. If we go to Swargaloka, there with the demigods, it's something else. We have no idea how matter what kind of is the composition of matter for the demigods. If we go to Brahmaloka, there are no atoms there for sure. It's something else. How we classify matter in a way that is consistent, that is valid for all planetary systems, for all dimensions. And the only way to do that is 5 elements. Because these 5 elements, they classify matter not based on the composition, but based on characteristics. The way you see, the way you feel it. So for example, water. The way water tastes for us is the same way that water tastes for a demigod. You have a table, right? Table is composed of the earth element. It's solid. So a table here is composed by atoms, right? If we go to Swargaloka, they also have tables there. It's not the same type of matter that we have here, but it's still the same characteristic, solid. The water is liquid, the fire burns, and so on. So the properties are the same everywhere in the universe. Although the matter may be composed of different, completely different types of particles or energy. Then we have here, inside of each universe. So here we have Mahavishnu, right? So Mahavishnu, he's creating all the universes. But then, these universes, they can't work by themselves, alone, right? For the universes to work, the Lord has to enter inside of each universe. So Mahavishnu, he expands himself. Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. And Garbhodakashaya Vishnu is the form of Vishnu who is present inside of each individual universe. Right? He's with us also, in your universe. Right? So he lays down on first he fills the universe, half of the universe with water, Sesha manifests, he lays down there, and he creates Brahma from his navel. So Brahma appears on top of a cosmic lotus that occupies basically all the space of the universe. So this lotus includes the material elements. The material elements were created before. Like 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the beginning of the 3rd canto, like first half of the first 10 chapters of 3rd canto, we have this description of the creation of the universe. Then we have the creation of the material elements. Brahma appears later. So the material elements are created already by the time that Brahma appears from the lotus flower. So this lotus flower, it spreads all over the universe. And it includes all the material elements. And Brahma uses these material elements to create the universe. I can see. So then, so this is all inside of the universe, right? Here we already see another artistic representation. We see the planets and the sun and so on. And then Vishnu expands himself again as Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. That's Paramatma. And Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, he enters everywhere. He enters inside of each atom, and he's inside of the heart of each living entity. So he's everywhere. Right? Although he's one, he's everywhere. That's the potency of Krishna. Right? Again, Krishna is so powerful. Right? He can be the biggest, as Mahavishnu. Universes pass through the pores of his body, but he can also be the smallest. And he enters everywhere, even inside of the atom. And then, so then we have an interesting concept also that is the concept of primary and secondary creation. So primary creation, Mahavishnu does. When he creates the idea of everything that exists. So everything that exists, like for like all books that are going to be written, all the universe, all the planets, all the ideas, all the experiences, everything that exists or will exist at some point in any of the material universes, they are all created at this stage by Mahavishnu, not as a physical representation, but as an idea, in a subtle manifestation. So this is the primary creation. And then we have the secondary creation, that is when Brahma finally gives form to everything. So one way to think about it is that all products, all creations, they start like this. They start as an idea, and later they are giving form, right? Someone makes a project, then the project is built, and then you have a house, for example. It starts as a project, architect makes a drawing and so on. So you have this idea of the house, and then someone puts the bricks, and then finally you have a house. When the house started existing? Only when it's finished, or from the beginning, when the project is created? Right? The project is already a house. It's just that it doesn't have a physical form yet. So similarly, Mahavishnu creates everything, and later all these ideas, the subtle manifestations, they gain form. So it's like Krishna is the owner of the company. Everything works under him, but he doesn't work directly. He's just there enjoying in Goloka Vrindavan with his friends. Mahavishnu is like the engineer. He creates the idea. He organizes everything. And Brahma is like the worker. He builds the house. He puts the bricks. Right? That's one way to understand it. And then we have here very simplified scheme of the universe. So we are here in Bhuloka, that is the intermediate planetary system. We have 7 levels under us, which are the lower planetary systems, where the Asuras live. Lower than these are the hellish planets. And then we have above us, we have Bhuvarloka, then Swargaloka, then Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and finally Brahmaloka. Right? So Brahmaloka is where Lord Brahma lives. It's the most subtle and elevated planetary system of this universe. Then we have Tapaloka. That's the place where the Kumaras live. Then we have Janaloka and Maharloka. These are abodes of great sages. They live there for a very, very long time. And then Bhuvarloka, that's the place where the lower demigods like Siddhas, Charanas, Vijadaras, and also the Rakshasas live. So this is close to us. And then finally Bhuloka is where we are. These 14 planetary systems, they're not just 14 physical places, but they also represent 14 levels of consciousness. Maybe I'll take her out. So we have, they represent 14 levels of consciousness, not just 14 physical places, because the way to access these different planetary systems is by a change of consciousness. It's not just about buying a ticket, taking a plane or a rocket or so on. The proof of that is that when you send probes or main missions... Okay.
I will wait for you.
Okay. So the proof of that is that when we send missions to the moon or to Mars or wherever we want, we don't see demigods there. We don't see apsaras there. The moon, Mars, and Venus, they are celestial planets. But when we go there, when we try to force our entrance there, what we see? Only rocks. We don't see anything. Because even if we go to the place, we don't have access to the higher dimensional reality that exists there. So actually it will be like this everywhere in the cosmos that we go using probes. Everywhere we will go, we will just see rocks, gases, radiation, extremes of temperature. We will never find anything better than we have here, anywhere in the cosmos. Why? Because if we are traveling only geographically. We are not traveling by purifying our consciousness, which is the way to travel through the universe. So, here we have a representation of Bhumandala, right? The intermediate planetary system. And Bhumandala is represented like this. But then, this is the way it's important to understand that this is the way we represent it. This is a simplified scheme of Bhumandala. That's probably not the way it really looks if we could really see it. So it's described in the Bhagavatam that you have these different rings that represent islands and oceans, right? And then you have the different planets and stars culminating with the pole star, Dhruvaloka. The point is, what we do with understand that. When we go through the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that Prabhupada doesn't comment so much on these verses. There are many verses that he doesn't give purport at all. But he gave later the conclusions of how this model works. And we have here, this is a letter that he made to Swarupa Damodar Maharaj later on. So he says, "My final decision is that the universe is just like a tree, with roots upwards. Just as a tree has branches and leaves, so the universe is also composed of planets which are fixed up in the tree like the leaves, flowers, fruits, etc. of the tree. The pivot is a pole star, and the whole tree is rotating on this pivot. Mount Sumeru is the center trunk, and is like a step hill, like the Alps mountains, which also have high peaks. I have seen in Switzerland one mountain peak which was so high that is penetrated through the clouds. The tree is turning, and therefore all the branches and leaves turn with the tree. The planets have their fixed orbits, but still they are turning with the turning of the great tree. There are pathways leading from one planet to another, made of gold, copper, etc., and these are the branches. Distances are also described in the 5th canto, just how far one planet is from the other. We can see that at night, how the whole planetary system is turning around, the pole star being the pivot. Each planet has its orbit fixed, but the sun is moving up, north and south. It is not that we shall accept the theory that the sun is fixed up and the others are all going around the sun. That is not correct. Even the 7th star is rotating once around the pole star in each 24 hours. The whole universe is just like a big tree. That is a fact. I do not think that the modern astronomers have any such idea that the whole universe is like a big tree. The planets are full of living entities, one after another, one above the other. The relative positions of the planet is fixed up, but the whole thing is turning. The sun is going north and south. It has its own orbit below the moon. So now our PhDs must carefully study the details of the fifth canto and make a working model of the universe. If we can explain the passing seasons, eclipses, phases of the moon, day and night, etc., then it will be very powerful propaganda. So how we understand these letters? I made a summary here, made it easier to understand. So, first of all, the universe, it has the form of an inverted tree. And that's exactly what Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, right? So, you see the tree on the other side of the lake, the reflection looks exactly like the original tree, but is upside down, right? The roots are upwards. So, Brahmaloka is on the root of the tree, at the end of the tree. And the other planetary systems, they are below it. Like they form the trunk, the branches, the twigs, the leaves, and so on of the tree. And this describes the basic organization of the planets, like in the cosmological model of the Vedas. And this, one analogy is this as a tree, another is as a chandelier. Like you look at chandelier, you have these kind of branches that connect, but you have these many lights and different details. That's also another way to see it. So the whole structure of stars and planets and so on, it rotates around Dhruvaloka. And we may think, oh no, wait, that's not what we study in modern cosmology, right? But that's what we see when we look to the sky. We have here, okay, manifestation, representation of the Vedic universe, right? Everything anchored in Dhruvaloka, everything turning. That's what we see when we look to the sky. Everything, the whole sky turns every 24 hours around the pole star. So exactly, it describes exactly what we see when we look to the sky. The pole star is the center of the universe, not by chance. That's the abode of Dhruvaloka. That's a Vaikuntha planet that is manifested inside of the universe. Lord Kshirodakashai Vishnu resides there, together with Dhruva Maharaja. That's why Dhruvaloka receives this position of being the central pivot, of being the center of all the stars and planets. So, here. So, the rotation of, then we have the rotation of the sun, right? That is another detail that is very, very difficult to understand in the model of the universe that is described on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because the Srimad Bhagavatam describes everything from a geocentric perspective. So it describes from our point of view of someone on the earth looking to the sky, right? Different from modern astronomy. Modern astronomy describes from heliocentric view, the sun in the center. The model that is described in the Vedic universe, it also perfectly describes what we see when we look to the sky. It's just that we need to understand it. So the movement of the sun, the way it is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is that we have the rotation of the whole sky every 24 hours, right? That's what we see, like this diagram that I show here. Everything goes around every 24 hours, all the stars and so on. And this includes also the sun. Every 24 hours, the sun goes around us, right? Day and night. But the sun has a separate movement. That is the annual movement of the sun. And this results in the passage of the seasons. These two movements, they go together. They are simultaneous. It's just like you imagine that you have a clock. Like imagine a clock. Every 12 hours, the clock goes around. Like, imagine that the clock takes 24 hours, so better example. So every 24 hours, the clock goes like this. Imagine you put a light in the arm of the clock. So you will see the light going around every 24 hours, right? But imagine that the clock is also turning simultaneously, so going up and down. So you have the arm going like this, right? Every 24 hours, but it's going up and down also. So it's going to do something like this. And that's the movement of the sun. Actually, the movement of the sun is like this, right? So you see the sun going like this, like it appears on the east, sets on the west every day, right? But as this year goes, it goes a little bit to this side, a little bit to the other side. And this creates the variations of the days and nights, like sometimes the days becomes longer, sometimes shorter, and also the seasons. So this is the result of the second movement of the sun. So these two movements, they go simultaneously. This is complicated to imagine. Even Parikshit Maharaja, he asked, no, how is that the sun moves on one direction and moves on the other direction simultaneously? And then Sukadeva Goswami, he gives this example of the potter's wheel. That, no, I can explain later. It's a little bit long. Then we have Mount Sumeru, situated at the center of Bhumandala, and is right in the center of the tree, right? It's aligned with Dhruvaloka. And then Prabhupada mentions that the tree is turning, and therefore all the branches and leaves turn with the tree. The planets have their fixed orbits, but still they are turning with the turning of the great tree. And this is a very delicate part of the model of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? The idea that Prabhupada gives that Bhumandala is not just a sequence of islands, but it's formed is a planetary system. It's formed by different planets. So each of these islands is formed by a number of different planets with their oceans and so on, and this whole structure forms what Bhagavatam describes as Bhumandala. So it's not just a series of islands, like literally. The descriptions that it gives for the islands and the oceans describes the orbits of these different planets that form the structure. Somehow these planets, they appear together in this higher dimension and they form this structure that is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's very important to understand that what Srimad Bhagavatam describes is the way that the demigods, they see the universe. So it's not necessarily we will see the same thing, because our senses are different from the demigods, right? That's a very important point to understand. Different beings, they can see reality in different ways. And the way we see reality is just the way that our senses tell us. Actually, no, it's just electric signals that comes to our brain, right? From the eyes, the ears. The eyes capture some image, convert into some electrical signal, goes to the brain interfaces with the mind and the intelligence, and based on this information, we create our view of reality, right? But what reality really is, we don't know. We just create our reality based on the information that we receive from our senses. So when we get a set of senses, then reality looks different for you. You imagine, what is the reality of an ant? It's not the same, right? The ant enters into this room, ant will not see the room and what is happening in the room the same way we see and understand. So similarly, the demigod, he sees reality in a different way. He sees the universe in a different way. What appears very distant for us, for the demigods, it appears closer. And it's accessible, like they can go from one place to the other. For us, it's not possible. It's described that in previous ages, some advanced human beings, like for example, Arjuna, he could go to the celestial planets in the same body that he was using here. So they were different from us. They had different types of bodies and they have much more advanced consciousness. So they could interact with the demigods. For us, with the type of bodies we have now, the type of consciousness we have now, it's usually not possible, right? So we can't see the universe the same way that they do, but when we study this description of the Srimad Bhagavatam, then gradually we elevate our consciousness and we start seeing the way they see. So we have the gross reality that we have, that is studied in cosmology, in modern cosmology and so on, and we have this higher dimensional reality that is observed by demigods and higher beings. So the way to see the reality the same way they see is by gradually elevating our consciousness. Right? And this is the process of Krishna consciousness that we are practicing. And part of this process is exactly to see the universe as a representation of Krishna. Something that appears by chance, that has no goal, no purpose, but a very ordered creation that has a purpose of teaching us how to serve Krishna so we can reconnect ourselves with our original nature of souls. So this is just like a very short presentation. There are so many details to explain, about this cosmology, but I try to give you maximum that is possible in 30 minutes. So I hope this can be useful to a certain extent. If you have some short questions, I can try to answer also quickly. Yes? Or if you need time to digest, that's also okay. Okay, if we have more time another day, we can discuss more topics. So, yes, Prabhu? I'm listening, maybe you just speak. Okay, you brought the microphone. Okay. Hare Krishna.
So there is some description about the position of moon regarding to the earth by Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, but we can see this moon with our eyes, that is here, not some far away. How can this be explained?
The point is that there are two moons described, there are two descriptions of the moon in the Vedas. So Bhagavatam describes moon as a celestial planet that is further away from earth than the sun. It's further away than the sun and it's bigger than the sun. It looks more or less the same size exactly because it's bigger. But then there is a different description of the moon in the Surya Siddhanta. And the description of the moon in the Surya Siddhanta matches modern science. The size of the moon, the distance of the moon, and so on. So why is that you have two descriptions? And to me at least it's clear that they are describing two different objects. That's why you have two descriptions. You have the celestial moon, and you have the way that the celestial moon is represented in your gross reality. And if you think about it, it's quite natural. Because when you make a map, for example, what a map is, you take a three-dimensional city or country or whatever, and you try to represent it into a two-dimensional paper, right? So you have a bridge, for example. A bridge, it has certain height, you have something on top of it, you have something under it. But when you make a map, it's just a line, right? So it's simplified. So the same way we have the moon, the celestial moon, that's where the demigods live. It's very far away from earth. And then you have the way that this moon is represented in our reality. And that's where we may try to go and so on. But this different, it's not exactly the same. It's the same, but in another sense, it's not exactly the same. Right? So that's how I understand it. Otherwise, it's very difficult to explain, this apparent contradiction between Bhagavatam and Surya Siddhanta, if there is just one object.
Where is in New Zealand North Pole?
Sorry?
Where is in New Zealand North Pole?
I don't.
You don't see. On New Zealand.
North Star.
No.
He's saying that in New Zealand you cannot see the North Star.
You can see Pole Star from there.
You cannot. If you can see in New Zealand, not star.
I'm not getting the point.
Kje se vidi na Novi Zelandiji, to je ta otok v južnem morja, kje se vidi Severica, zvezda Severica. To je zdaj vprašanje.
So,
To me težko razumeti.
the point is, can we see the North Star from the New Zealand?
I don't know, I'm not there.
I mean, I guess not, because it's on the other side of the globe.
In this
You don't
sense.
see the upper level of the sky, which you can see from the north.
Yeah, this you can study in astronomy, like it is just... The art is a globe, like, so then you need to take this into consideration.
I can't understand that model Vedic universe.
You can't or you can? Ali lahko ali ne moreš?
I can't understand what is Vedic universe. I don't see that.
Yeah, it's not so... I try to explain what I can in 30 minutes, but now the Pujari is already waiting there. Maybe another time we can make a longer seminar and then we can explain more detail. Yes?
I would just like to ask you, because we don't have a lot of time left anymore, I would just like to ask you what is, according to Vedic literature, especially I have in my mind Srimad Bhagavatam Purana, the exact relationship between Supreme Godhead, Sri Krishna and Mahavishnu on the other hand.
Yes, and the point is that Krishna, he doesn't have any duty to do. He just likes to play with his friends and girlfriends, right? And with his associates. Everything that has to be done, he expands himself. So he expands himself in Narayana, in all the different forms of Vishnu. And when there is necessity of creating the universe, he expands himself as Mahavishnu. So as Mahavishnu, he creates the universe. So Krishna doesn't need to come here and create the universe. He just expands himself as Mahavishnu, and Mahavishnu creates the universe. So that's one of the benefits of being God, right? You can create, you can expand yourself. Imagine, you have to work. Okay, I expand myself, and he goes to work. I stay with my family, right? So that's Krishna. So Mahavishnu is just this part of the part of the part of the part of Krishna that creates the material universe. Although he's just the part of the part of the part of the part, still he's so powerful that the universe passes through the pores of his body. So we can just imagine how powerful Krishna is. That is the original, the origin. Okay? So thank you. Sorry, Prabhu. Thank you. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krišna.
Najlepša hvala za navdihujoče predavanje. Sedaj pa sledi ples pred božanstvi.
पंचतत्व शिशि गोरेताय की नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमद् भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादे पश्चात्यादिष्टधारिणे Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Gaura Bhattarinda Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Gaura Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Gaura Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Shri Panchatattva Shri Shri Guru Nitai Ki Shri Prabhupada Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Sutra Sutra Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Sutra Sutra Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jaya ISKCON Bhakti Founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kuho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Ki Jai 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, namely Sanatan Rupa Jiva Gopal Bhatta Gopal Raghunath Bhatta Goswami Prabhu's Ki Jai Narottam Das Thakur Ki Jai Ganga Maya Mulmaya Kai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Yamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Guru Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Pralada Lada Dahine. Hiranya Kashipurvakshaha. Shilatankana Kalaye. Iton Nrisimha Paraton Nrisimha. Yato Yato Yamitato Nrisimha. Ahir Nrisimha Hridaya Nrisimha. Narasimha Mahadin Sharanam Prapadye. Narasimha Mahadin Sharanam Prapadye. Avakar Madhuta Shringa Dalita Hiranyakashipu Danu Bringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. महाराज की
Najlepša hvala. Sedaj pa pred nadaljevanjem programa še nekaj kratkih obvestil. Za začetek velja omeniti srečna vest, da je včeraj v Ljubljano prispel njegova svetost Preladananda s vami. Pravi tako, da se bojo sedaj verjetno jutranja predavanja od dane iz njegove strani marsikatera. Prav tako pa se obeta obisk Sankaršane Dase Adikarja. In sicer od 27. marca do 8. aprila. Tako da toliko vesti, kaj se nam obeta v prihodnosti. Sedaj pa velja še poudariti, izpostaviti zahvalo nekatere bakte, ki so doprinesli nedeljskemu programu. In sicer seveda ni mogoče našteti vseh, lahko pa izpostavimo naslednje. Bhajane je Njojanita Gaura Prabhu, Gaura Arati Bhakta Jan, za predavanje je poskrbel Caitanya Candra Prabhu, ikebane je izdelala Bhaktina Maša, cvetne vence pa sta izdelali Prema Maji Rada Mataji in Nataka Chandrika Mataji. Obleko za božanstva sta izbrala Bhakta Vatsala Nitai Prabhu in Giridhari Prabhu, nato pa sta božanstva še preoblekla. Kuhali so učenci njegove svetosti Chandramali Svamija, pri rezanju zelenjave pa so sodelovali Lalita Govinda Prabhu, Shakshi Gopal Prabhu, Gopikanta Mataji in Dayal Chandra Prabhu. Se nam pa danes obeta tudi program Plus, potem ob 19. in sicer z Lalito Govinda Prabhuja. Tako sedaj smo pripravljeni, da se premaknemo na zadnji uradni, recimo temu del programa, in sicer prasadam. Prasadam danes ni sponsoriran, tako da bi bili zelo hvaležni za prispevek, bodi si v trgovinici, bodi si neposredno pri prevzetju prasadama. Sedaj pa lahko skupaj v en glas izgovorimo še molitev pred prasadama.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Samsare, Shri Krishna Bhagavatam, Gauri Hare Jiva Joy, Swami Sadhana Dilo Bhai, Seva Dika Pau, Prabhuna Gau, Premena Koshti Chaitanya Nidai.
Najlepša hvala, Hare Krišna.
salsa, but today is not. It's a bit more expensive. Oh, that's very good seaside, yeah? Ah,